Everyone. Happy day. Want to come on real quick with a perspective for y'all. You know, a lot of people wonder how we got to this place of so much diversity spiritually, right? Like, it can be very confusing when you get to thinking about it and pondering it. And it'll make you second guess your relationship to God and God's hierarchy of things. But you gotta go back to the beginning, you guys. This is why I make such a big deal out of communicating to you what happened with the fallen angels. The fall is really the beginning of all of this. Before the fall, there were no demons in the world. I'm not going to say that there were no demons because they didn't just get created out of nowhere. They existed within another realm. But within this world, this realm, there were no demonic forces. This was a singular realm where they had the capability to manifest, but no one knew the knowledge. There was no way for them to make themselves manifest because everyone was standing in their righteousness. Everyone was living according to their creation. Okay? So you have to remember, when the angels came and ascended upon Mount Hermon, prior to Mount Hermon, Azazel, I couldn't think of the name. Azazel had already been here and had already turned and went rogue. Okay? When Azazel was here, things were not as bad. It's just like with anything else. When people get wind of something, like if you get wind that you can do something that's against the law and you'll get away with it, you'll probably be like, okay, we're going to watch and see how that turns out for them. And then we're going to follow suit if it's successful. That's the same thing that happened when Azazel came and went rogue. Azazel came, went rogue, and a time had passed. And there was no retribution from God on Azazel's behalf. So the rest that were watching in the heavenly realms, because many were coming and going. They weren't supposed to be. Some of them were. And they were all speaking back and forth as to what they discovered when they came and what was going on here. And then they all made a decision and said, you know what, this thing might be successful. I mean, we actually could pull this off. Sure, we're going to be punished. But, I mean, we already know the nature of God. We already know what the punishment possibly will be. So we're going to have to, they descended on Mount Hermon, and all 200 of them, in a convention. Meaning they came all at the same time. It was a big deal. Usually they coming and going in different times. Now they made a decision that they were going to permanently reside here. So they all came at once on Mount Hermon. And Shemjaza, the leader, so I'm assuming the one that came up with the idea, because he is the one that said, look, I'm not going to take the brunt of this when we get caught. Not if we get caught, but when we get caught. I'm not going to take the brunt of this. You're going to have to swear to me. We're going to have to make a covenant right here and bind ourselves to this so that we're not going to be playing this blaming game that obviously is played whenever someone gets caught, because this had to have happened before. This could not be the first of its kind. You know what I mean? For them to know the drasticness of it, and then for them to go so far as to bind themselves to it, they must have known. You don't bind yourself to something unless you know that it's probably going to, you've seen it happen before, and you've seen the fallout of it. And you're saying to yourself, okay, we're not going to let this happen in this instance. I'm going to protect myself in some way. And that's what they did. So I want you to get a visual. I want you to start thinking. This page is for thinkers. Okay? Searchers, seekers, and thinkers. And teachers. And everything that I give you, I do not want you to believe. I want you to listen to it and ponder it and cross-reference it. Okay? I am not a guru. I am not someone out here, a master at anything. I am pondering this thing just like you. And I am just reporting to you what I discover along my way in real time, whether they be my experiences with witchcraft, whether they be my experiences in studying sacred texts, whether they be my experiences interacting with people or what have you. I report that with the hopes that you will take it and not just say, okay, she's right, and that's the law, and that's the way I'm going to live my life. No, it's for you to take and for you to then ponder and cross-reference with the information that you've acquired along your way. Because I expect you to have acquired something along your way to be able to accept my offering and multiply it or subtract it. So anyway, these angels descended for a purpose. Them lusting after the women was not because they just wanted to have sex with the women. I mean, I'm sure that had a lot to do with it, the carnal aspect of them being able to have their way and create whatever they would like to create within the realm. But, and I got a call coming in. I wish it would not do that. I don't want to be bothered. And so, nonetheless, they knew that if they had already known what type of beings they were. These are very intelligent individuals. Don't get it twisted. These are the masters of the earth because they were bound here. They couldn't leave, so they had to make this their home. And they are the ones with all the information. Even though their parents could not last in this realm, they were highly energetic beings. They needed a lot of energy to sustain themselves. And because they were cut off, they had no longer any access to that type of energy. So they had to incarnate, they had to multiply. Before they even did this, it says it in the book of Enoch, chapter 6, that they descended upon Mount Hermon because they lusted after the women. The women was the reason why they descended. It wasn't because they loved the women. They descended because they lusted after the women. They lusted because they knew in order to make this thing work, they had to procreate. They had to multiply themselves within the physical man and woman. They couldn't do it just, okay, we're going to ascend and we're going to be kings in the earth and we're going to have these women and blah, 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 blah. No. They did it because they knew the first thing we need to do is to mingle with her seed and become one with them. Because our energetic bodies will not be able to withstand this frequency, this environment. It's not enough energy. So they mingled with her. And this was the big deal with God. If you look throughout all of the scriptures in the Old Testament, you will see the majority of the commandments of God are that you do not mingle amongst the nations. This was why. Because all of these nations had mingled with the fallen angels and their children. They had created bloodlines. And what happens is the frequency of this planet will automatically purge herself of these lines through nature. And it will preserve the seed that is to be here. And it will purge itself of the seed that is not. But if you mingle the line, there is no seed that is preservable. I'm telling you, this was on my spirit today. So when you see these demons and all of these other spirits, when the angels ascended and they rebelled against God, the first thing they did was made it with the women. The second thing was they taught the children all these different sciences, but they could no longer go before God. They didn't know what the retribution would be for their actions. Had they known that God would cut them off from the source, I'm sure they would have better planned their next steps. But because they couldn't forecast out that far and see the severity of God's punishment, because that's a severe punishment. That's severe. I can't say that God has done that before. I don't know. I don't know the history of all the different worlds. But they were cut off from the source. So in their craftiness, they had to become crafty. They are not by default crafty. They just like me and you. If we have to become manipulative and crafty, we could do that. We are created with all these different types of abilities within us, dependent upon the circumstances. Same with them. They had to become crafty. They could no longer get the power they needed to sustain themselves and their children, even though they're bound here in this foreign place. So they had to create back ways. And this is where you get another version of your Tower of Babels and people making a name for themselves and trying to go up into heaven. They're looking for back doors. This is where you get all of these sigils and these beings that you create with the mind. And you breathe life in, and you invoke life in by way of thought and activity and emotion. This is where you get your demons, which are your fallen angels that have transitioned. This is where you get the demonic realm. These are all of those children of the fallen angels, the monsters, all of them. Because energy does not just go away. When me and you transition, we don't just go away and dissipate into nothing. Many people don't even think that far ahead in their lives as to, okay, well, what actually happens when you transition? It frightens many people. People are living in fear and ignorance because of fear. But the truth is that energy does not go away. It just transitions itself from one state to the next. It's the same way when you transition from life. You go from breathing to non-breathing. Wanted to come on today with this thought-provoking content for you, just to till in your minds today, give you something to think on, to nibble on in your mind. It was on my spirit today as far as what are demons, how are they created, why did all of this stuff happen, where did all these different spirits come from, why are we bombarded with them, how do they have so much power? Very interesting. Be good to yourselves and be good to each other. Peace and love.